This transmission is all about Padmé Naberrie Amidala. Stick around after the events of her death to hear about her enduring legacy and impact on the galaxy. Padmé Naberrie was born on the beautiful planet Naboo in 46 BBY. Naboo was a mid-rim world known for its gorgeous landscapes and vast underwater ecosystems. The citizens had a deep love and respect for art, culture, and harmony in all relationships. The planet has historically always stood for peace and diplomacy, traits that Padmé would carry into her adult life and career in politics. Born to a modest family, her parents, Rui and Jobel, raised Padmé and her older sister, Sola, in a small mountain village, away from the hustle and bustle of the planet's primary city, Theed. Her parents instilled the values of compassion, selflessness, and service in their daughters. From a very young age, it was clear Padmé was incredibly intelligent. She stood out among her peers as a leader. Her schooling reinforced the ideals and skills that she possessed, so that at just 14 years old, she was elected Queen of Naboo. I know elected and queen don't generally go together, so let me explain. The titles of king and queen were used on the planet, but Naboo had switched to a democracy years before Padmé's time. The titles were kept traditionally. The elected official had power like a president or prime minister, not a dictator. The name Amidala is a royal name. Taking this on as her surname was also an old tradition. It was started to protect the family identity of the ruler. She kept the name after her term, as it had some weight in the wider galactic political world. Her political peers wouldn't know the tradition of every planet, and she was infamous for her reign as queen under this name, who handled many crises very well in her short time in office. Though she wasn't the youngest queen in Naboo's history, her age did raise some eyebrows amongst the population. It didn't take long for her morals, determination, and vision for the planet to silence any naysayers. She wasn't queen for very long when events would unfold that would define her entire political career. A massive organization, the Trade Federation, blockaded her planet, insisting on a very unfavorable treaty. The blockade turned to aggression when the Federation invaded her planet with an army of battle droids. No one knew at this time the much bigger picture of what would come to the galaxy. Even under occupation, Padmé refused to give in to her attackers. Using her highly trained handmaidens, Padmé was able to play something of a shell game with her identity. She posed as a handmaiden and left the planet under the protection of 2 Jedi Knights. She didn't do this to abandon her people, quite the opposite. She left with the Jedi Knights to go to the galaxy's capital of Coruscant and plead for help to the Senate. Her ship was damaged as she made her escape with her cohorts. This forced a landing on a remote outer rim planet called Tatooine. This seemingly insignificant planet would change the course of her life and the galaxy several times. Here, she would meet a boy, a few years her junior, Anakin Skywalker. This bright-eyed, optimistic boy helped Padmé and the Jedi Knights on their mission. He was around when the Sith, who were long thought extinct, were exposed, and made his way to Coruscant with them. This young boy, who was born into slavery, was the Chosen One, according to a Jedi prophecy. He would be a great general in the looming war Padmé and her entourage would learn of. He would also one day be the husband of Padmé and the father of her children. But I'm getting way ahead of myself. Padmé pleaded her case to the Galactic Senate with the help of Sheev Palpatine, a senator from her home planet of Naboo. Palpatine wore the face of a friend, but was secretly the evil Sith Lord who was manipulating the entire galaxy toward war so that he could take control. Padmé's pleas fell on deaf ears. The Senate was so corrupt and more considered with individual personal gains than doing what was right for the citizens they were supposed to be representing. Frustrated with the system not working the way it should, she decided to take matters into her own hands. She returned to Naboo to talk to the second most dominant species that populated the planet. The humans controlled the surface, and the Gungans lived below the waters. The humans and Gungans had a falling out many years before, and a largely unspoken truce was struck where the two peoples didn't interact. Showing humility and respect to the Gungans had both sides put their long-forgotten differences aside for the good of their planet and both populations. Padmé leading the humans, Boss Nass leading the Gungans, and the Jedi helping to devise a battle strategy put together a 3-pronged attack. The Jedi were there to protect Amidala and made it clear they were not there to be warriors, a role these 2 knights and eventually the entire order would be forced into soon enough. The attack was successful. The Gungans pulled the army into open combat in fields surrounding the city. Kenobi. Padme accompanied a strike force into the palace to get the Trade Federation leaders, and her navy went after the central control ship that controlled all of the battle droids. Her people were liberated, and Padme was praised for her service to Naboo. She was easily re-elected for a second term as queen. The citizens had many discussions about amending their own constitution to allow her to stay in office. She refused and followed the traditions of her people and stepped down after her second term. But her service wasn't over. She was immediately elected to represent Naboo in the Galactic Senate. In her role as a senator, she was dedicated to the Republic and its democratic ideals. She was one of the primary voices against the Military Creation Act, which would see a massive army formed for the Republic, all but guaranteeing open war. She wanted to pursue peace talks with the growing separatist movement. Her work in the Senate was difficult, and her personal life became so as well. She was reunited with Anakin Skywalker, now a grown Jedi. They were brought even closer with the intense events of their young lives, and eventually their feelings grew into love. A love that was forbidden by Anakin's Jedi vows and complicated for Padme's career. After another near-death experience, the two couldn't bury their feelings anymore. They retreated to Padme's home planet and married in secret. As much as their shared love made them happy, it was also a source of incredible stress. Not only of having to hide it, but at not being able to see each other regularly. The galaxy was being reshaped in the midst of the Clone Wars. At times, Padme's desire for peace and Anakin's natural gift as a warrior and general created further tension in their relationship. Earlier in Padme's political career, she was instrumental in setting the stage for Sheev Palpatine to go from senator to Supreme Chancellor, ruling over the entire Senate. He was using that position to consolidate even more power under himself in the name of the greater good. Padme was uncomfortable with this and distrusted her former political ally. She was very vocal against the war and always pushed for peace. Being so forthcoming made her a target for political attacks as well as multiple abduction and assassination attempts. Despite her efforts, along with those who were allies in politics, such as Senator Mon Mothma of Chandrila and Senator Bail Organa of Alderaan, the republic she served was becoming more authoritarian daily. Padme and the senators I just mentioned grew increasingly concerned and started having hidden meetings about Palpatine's unchecked power. Anakin, who always saw Palpatine as something of a father figure and trusted him, was becoming more emotionally distant with his wife. Their time apart was increased as his successes on the battlefield kept him hopping from one military campaign to the next. The young, beautiful, dedicated, and just Padmé Amidala's life was coming untethered. She was now pregnant with Anakin's children, just one child as far as they knew at this time, and had to keep that a secret as well. A secret she knew she wouldn't be able to keep for much longer. She had lost a political ally and something of a mentor in Palpatine, and now her own husband was falling to the dark side. When Anakin fully fell to the dark side, Padme wanted to go after him. She was convinced that her love for him could bring him back into the light. Padme's friend and Anakin's master in his apprenticeship, Obi-Wan Kenobi, was finally filled on so many things the two had been keeping a secret. Obi-Wan had some clues on certain aspects, but had no idea it was as far gone as it was. The war kept him distracted, and the Jedi's intuition was clouded by the dark side. He urged Padme to stay on Coruscant while he, Obi-Wan, went to talk to Anakin on Mustafar. He wanted to keep her safe, but Padme hid away on Obi-Wan's ship. When Obi-Wan was unable to talk Anakin down, she made her presence known. Anakin, already spiraling out of control and steeped in the dark side, let his anger take over fully. He thought Obi-Wan had turned Padme against him. One of the final pushes of his fall to the dark side was done in the name of saving Padme from a vision that Anakin had. Now, he would fulfill that prophecy himself and lose his wife forever. He attacked her with the Force. He didn't kill her directly, but she was in a fragile state, being so heavily pregnant. The exhaustion of everything she was dealing with and losing Anakin in a brutal way broke her spirit, which would soon result in her death. Just before her death in 19 BBY, she gave birth to twins. She was able to see her children briefly and give them names, Luke and Leia. Obi-Wan worked with Bail Organa and the Jedi Master Yoda to hide Padme and Anakin's children. The plan being to wait until they were ready to be trained, as the Skywalker lineage was incredibly powerful in the Force. They would be used to take on Palpatine and Vader to try to restore peace, balance, and democracy to the galaxy. During her wake and funeral funeral ceremonies, Padme was made up to still look pregnant, reducing the chances that Palpatine or Vader would go looking for the child of Skywalker. While Padme wasn't around for the birth of these small rebel cells that opposed the Empire, nor their unification into the Alliance to restore the Republic, her ideals and spirit were shared with many. Her friends and political allies, Bail Organa and Mon Mothma, carried on the fight publicly as well as in secret. Even her husband's former Padawan, Ahsoka Tano, joined the fight against tyranny. Before the days of the full-blown rebellion, a small group that were incredibly close to Padme wanted to directly keep her memory and spirit alive. Her handmaidens from her days as queen formed a group called the Amidalans. They wanted to figure out the true events around Padme's death. They never bought into the Imperial official narrative. Sabe, who had a striking resemblance to the former queen and senator, led the group. In the incredible Darth Vader comic run of 2020, Darth Vader actually mistakes Sabe for Padme when he first runs into her and the Amidalans. This group of women showed no fear when confronting the Dark Lord of the Sith, thinking he had something to do with Padme's death. Obviously, they were right, but not in the way that any of them suspected. The confrontation turned to a mutual understanding and a loose alliance when Sabe realized that Vader was once Jedi Knight Anakin Skywalker, who did genuinely love Padme, at least in his own way. The Amidalans and Vader alliance actually did some good for the galaxy. Corrupt systems were toppled, even some that were part of the Imperial regime that Vader was supposed to be serving. Sabe worked with Vader, but saw him as a tool. She never fully trusted him and never shook the feeling that he was more involved in Padme's death than he was letting on. When their short-term partnership ended, Sabe knew she may have to face Vader in the future. We know Vader didn't come around and return to the light at this point, but the resemblance between Padme and Sabe stirred something in him. Retracing parts of Padme's past and visiting Naboo, the place of his wedding, also stirred Anakin's spirit. Vader was sworn to Palpatine and the dark side, but the good was in him. At times, he would even think about reawakening the man he used to be. He even thought about turning on Palpatine on more than one occasion. Circumstances and manipulation kept him on his short leash. Padme's legacy lived on in her handmaidens, friends, constituents, political allies, and her children. They became instrumental in the eventual downfall of the Galactic Empire and return to the light for Anakin Skywalker. Check out this transmission next for more heroes from the Star Wars universe.